which are coming shortly. One is documentation, second is MTP and PCP and DT Act, and third is consumer and criminal liability of doctors. Doctor is a chairperson at Ethics and Medical Legal Committee, FOXI, 2017-19. Doctor has delivered more than 1,500 lectures on medical legal topics. So welcome, Doctor. Welcome to the show.
Good evening.
Over to you.
Yes. Thank you, Sankalp, for the kind introduction. Vaibhav, there is a lot of disturbance. A very warm welcome to a very dear friend, Dr. Gitin Sharma. Sir, thank you so much for accepting our invitation. Good evening. I never forget Dr. Gitin is a very dear friend of mine. For this show, I invited Dr. Gitin by a single phone call. He accepted the invitation. But I never forget when I was a newcomer in this industry, when I was starting my IVF center. At that time also, I know the Dr. Gitin Sharma from 2013. We met in one Ahmedabad conference. So at the inauguration of my center, I just called Dr. Gitin Sharma that you have to come. I never forget that Dr. Gitin Sharma on a single phone call, he has come at that time also, in spite of his having his busy schedule. So thank you once again, Dr. Gitin Sharma. I am honored to have you in my session. So friends, as all of you know, this session, the Pundit and Dr. Ritu show, in which I am always interviewing the persons who are very knowledgeable, who believe on the basics that knowledge is always increases by sharing. Vaibhav, there is a lot of disturbance. WhatsApps are coming. So the persons who always believe that the knowledge is always increases by the sharing. So Dr. Gitin is a very, very eminent speaker. I can see a guru of medical legal field. So who can be the best expert for this field to discuss our day-to-day queries? Yeah. So because as all of us are having lot of queries in this field, कि हम क्या करें, क्या ना करें, especially in the ART, there are a lot of dilemmas, lot of confusions. So today we are going to start having some queries with our expert, Dr. Gitin Sharma, on over this. So with your permission, let me start the happy virtual hour. If you permit me, I will start.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, thank you once again. Dr. Sharma, I want to know that what is the difference between the guidelines, recommendation and law? A very, very common thing. हम सब gynecologists को इस बारे में कुछ ना कुछ problem है या कुछ ना कुछ yeah.
Basically, guidelines are non-specific rules or principles that provides direction to action or behavior. So they are basically executive guidelines, and these may be considered by a court as a direction in deciding civil cases, but that cannot be activated in violation for any or for criminal liability, I can say. And recommendation is just an advice. So we always recommend something to others. So recommendation is for all. And law means it is a basically body or bundle of rules made by government, and they are applied by courts. So you all know Parliament frames the law, and law is implemented by courts. In the language of Austin, it is said that law is a sovereign command which has sanction behind it. So that means if you will not follow the law, there will be punishment for you. But for guideline, there is no such punishment if you don't follow the guidelines. So that is the basic difference between law and guideline. Salmond says that law is an instrument of social engineering. So whenever there is some defect in the society, that is corrected by implementing law. So that is the purpose of making law, to correct the defect in the society.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Sharma. My next question is regarding this guidelines. There are so many guidelines by the ICMR. Some is ART guidelines from since 2005, then 2010, then 2015, then 2017. तो अभी क्या follow करना है, क्या नहीं follow करना है? You will be the best judge to guide us. So please enlighten us about this.
So many disputes even amongst the legal people, but what what is our interpretation, I will like to tell you.
Yes.
In 2005, there was national guidelines for accreditation, supervision, and regulation of ART clinics in India. So that was 2005 guideline.
Yeah.
Later on, in 2010, there were ART draft rules framed by government, and if you that is ART regulation. So ART Act and ART regulation were made in 2010. Now, if you go to the website of government, they have put this as an ICMR guideline only. So these are also put as an ICMR guideline. Later on, there were 2013 regulations regarding surrogacy. Then for ART, there was 2015 guideline. Then again, 2017 guidelines were there. So multiple guidelines are there. So basically, what we believe is 2005 or 2010, what is to be followed, because 2015 and 17 are never made public. They are put only for a few days on website for a suggestion. So they are not guidelines. Now in 2005 and 2010 guidelines seems more logical and more acceptable, because there are so many unacceptable and illogical things in 2005, and there was change, and 2010 guidelines are there. So we also always believe that we should follow 2010 guideline.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. So now I want to ask a very basic question, which all our ART specialists are having in mind. These days, so many persons are approaching us. Some the medical rep, some the other per fellow, that they have done the course of the embryology and they want to join us as an embryologist. So please guide us that what is the guideline says, that what is the basic criteria or the basic qualification of the embryologist. And like the radiologist is not able to work in more than 2 places. And what is the criteria about this embryologist, that how many places he is supposed to work?
So basically, who is embryologist? So if we define embryologist, any medical graduate can become embryologist with 1 year experience, or anybody who has postgraduate degree or doctorate in appropriate area of life sciences. So that is regarding reproductive endocrinology or embryology or something like that. But as you know, there are no degrees in India pertaining. Previously, there were no degrees for embryologist in India, and there is no MCI recognized degree at least for embryologist. Yeah. So it was said that whoever has done BSc or BVSc in microbiology, so in 2005 guideline, so anybody who has done BSc and who has 5 years of hands-on training experience, that was considered as a embryologist. But in 2010 guideline, that experience was reduced to 3 years. Okay. Now recent surrogacy guidelines are there, we all know, and in that guideline, the definition of embryologist say that any BSc person who has hands-on experience for 2 years only, he should take, whether in any private lab or government lab or some authorized person who gives the experience certificate. That is not clear in any law. But what they have said, that any person who has 2 years of experience after completion of degree can be considered as embryologist according to surrogacy regulation.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Now, my very important question, which we are facing in very day-to-day of practice in the metro cities. In these days, so many patients are coming who are not married, but in another live-in relationship. So, what is the criteria? What are the guidelines says about this live-in relationship? Can we treat that patients for the ART?
As I have said, that 2010 guidelines are very much logical. So in 2010 guideline, there is one section 32.
Yeah.
And that section 32 says that ART, technology will be available to single person, married couple, or an unmarried couple also. So whoever is in living relationship are unmarried couple. So they can definitely have benefit of ART. So you can definitely give treatment to live-in couple, but there is one provision that in place of husband, that person should be ready to sign,
Yes.
who is in
Yeah.
live-in relationship.
Yeah.
Okay. If he is not ready to sign, then we cannot give them services.
True, true. Same we are doing. After taking the signature of the live-in relationship, then only we are proceeding.
Yeah.
So, means according to then these guidelines, the partner of the live-in relationship, his semen can be used for ART if he is giving the signature.
Yes. So if he is giving signature, then you can use it. But if he doesn't give signature, then you cannot use his semen, because then that will be a donor semen, and donor should always be anonymous. There cannot be a known donor. Okay. So if he gives consent as a husband, only then his semen can be used. Otherwise, his semen cannot be used.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much. So as we know that we give the some amount is fixed for the donor. So in this case, how to proceed?
For what, madam?
As we know, means once we take the for the donor semen, the amount is always means once we take the semen, the frozen semen samples from this semen bank. Yeah. For in this case, so nothing like that, na? Ki on the papers we have to show. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much. Now, please guide us about this the age limit for the ART procedures.
See, in 2005 guideline and 2010 guideline, there were no upper limits for ART treatment at least. And the lower limits were for female 18 years is the age of marriage, and 21 years is the age of marriage for male. Okay. But in 2015 guideline, they had put a limitation on the age for ART treatment. And in that 2015 guideline, first time they put the age limit for male 23 to 55 and for female 23 to 50. Now in 2017 guideline, they have again come out with another guideline, and in 2017 provisions, female age is 18 to 45 and male is 21 to 50. So that is the age for giving ART treatment.
Yeah. Thank
so
you
can
so much.
treat female up to 45 years and you can give treatment above 18 years. Okay.
So means for this IVF also, these are the age limits.
Yes. These are the age limits for IVF only.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much. Now coming to a very important topic, जिसके बारे में मैंने आपको बहुत बार सुना भी है, and you are a master blaster for that regarding this consent. Huh? So I think no one can else explain better on this topic for this consent. So please enlighten us. अभी इतने सारे consent हैं ICMR में in 2005 and 2010. So please enlighten us that these what are the consents are mentioned in this ICMR guidelines. Are these are complete? Means to for whom, how, and when? Please enlighten us about this.
So basically, in 2005 guideline, 4.1 to 4.9 sections were the consent. So 4.1 was for IVF and ICSI, so couple should sign. 4.2 was for IUI husband, 4.3 for IUI donor, 4.4 for embryo freezing, 4.5 for sperm retrieval, 4.6 was for oocyte retrieval. Then from 4.8 was regarding surrogacy, 4.7 for surrogacy agreement, 4.8 was for oocyte donor, and 4.9 was for sperm donor. So these were all the consents. And the same thing was carried on in 2010 guideline, and the names were changed. So in 2010, D to L are the consent, form D to form L. D is for IVF ICSI, both couple has to sign. E is for IUI husband, F is for IUI donor, G is for embryo freezing, H for sperm retrieval, I for oocyte retrieval and embryo transfer, J for surrogacy, K for oocyte donor, and L for sperm donor. So these are all the consents. Now, basically, when we go through all these consents are not a complete consent. If we go through the definition as per Samira Kohli versus Dr. Prabha Manchanda. So we always recommend that when some consent is given in a particular act, you should follow those consents. But for your safety, you should also take an extra consent for any procedure you are doing. So suppose you are doing ovum pickup, then procedural consent should be taken separately. If you do IUI, if you do embryo transfer, then sperm retrieval. So you should take consent for these procedures separately. Now there are a few procedures, the consent of which are not there in this. Suppose sperm freezing, oocyte freezing. So these consents are not there in the act. So we have to develop, according to our logical explanation, the consents of procedures which are not given in this act. Now, how to take consent? That is an art. We always say that consent is a contract in between doctor and patient. Okay. So before taking signature on the consent paper, you have to fill all the blanks which are there in the consent. You cannot add or delete anything after taking signature of the patient. Now, what normally occurs that whenever patient enters in your hospital, your staff is being provided a few pages of consent. कि यहाँ आप sign ले लो, है ना? इतनी जगह आप sign ले लो.
True.
And they used to take sign on blank. Later on they fill. So that is not allowed. Okay. Now regarding the time of consent, we always tell that every consent has a proper time. So whenever you take consent in form, कनेक्शन लूज हो गया था. हेलो.
Yeah, sorry, my net connection.
Yeah, कोई बात.
Training here heavily, that's why. Yeah,
no,
yeah.
No problem.
Yeah.
So basically, you cannot take a blanket consent at a time.
Yeah.
But every consent has a proper time. So suppose you are taking consent for embryo freezing in Form G. So you can take consent for embryo freezing only after the embryos are made. Okay.
True.
Beforehand, you cannot take the consent. Now suppose you are taking consent for embryo transfer. So then you are supposed to have in your possession the embryos. Then only you can feel that how many number of embryos you are going to transfer. So basically, once you form embryo, only after that you can take consent for Form G in Form G and Form I. So basic thing is that at what time consent should be taken, that should be taken at a proper time. So there are times fixed for each and every consent, and you cannot add or delete, or you cannot fill later on the details in the blanks. So you have to fill it. Doctor has to sign, patient has to sign, as well as two witnesses are supposed to sign in all the consent forms.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sharma. Now my very other question is coming regarding this donor oocytes. So especially after this lockdown period also, so many patients are also approaching, so many from the public are approaching us, ki please ma'am, we are in a need of money. So can we, my very basic question, can we take the unmarried girl as for the donor oocyte?
See, in 2005 and in 2010 guidelines, there is no bar. There is no mention that you cannot take unmarried girl. There is only bar was the that patient should be in between, donor should be in between 21 to 35 years.
Yeah.
And there are few more things that she should not donate more than 6 times in lifetime, and the interval between two donations should not be more than 3 months, and she should not have received blood product or blood products in last 6 months. So these are a few provisions which are there. But regarding married status, there was no mention in 2005 and 10 bill, these guidelines. But in 2015 and 17, in both bills, it has been mentioned that the ovum donor should be selected. She should be ever married, and she should have one child of at least 3 years. And one can donate only once in lifetime. So that kind of provision is there in 15 and 17 guidelines. But in 2005 and 10 guidelines, there was no such provision. And according to that, you can definitely take unmarried girl for ovum donation. But ethically, usually people are avoiding.
True. Yeah. Thank you so much. Now my other question is regarding the same for this donor oocyte only. The lady who is staying away from the husband but not legally divorced. So can we take that patient as a oocyte donor?
Basically, madam, there are two status: single or married.
Yeah.
Single means who is unmarried or divorcee or widow. If somebody is not unmarried, not divorcee, not widow, that means she is married. Okay. So if somebody is married, then husband consent is must. Now, what is the definition of divorce and death? A widow. Divorce means it should be official divorce, decree of divorce from the court of law. So if somebody is living separately for last 7 years, that doesn't mean that she becomes divorcee. But with this excuse, she should go to court and they should ask from the court to get decree that for last 7 years I am staying away from my husband. I do not know whether he is alive or not, and on that basis please give me divorce. So court will issue the decree of divorce. In the similar way, in few communities there is tradition that 5 people sit down on chair and they decide that okay, from tomorrow you are separated. So that separation, although may be valid socially, but that is not legally valid. If you want to get legal validation to that kind of divorce, then you should go with that order of that punch to the court, and through that order you can get court decree. And once you get decree of court of divorce, only then that is applicable. And regarding widow, she must produce the death certificate of the husband.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Now, very important question regarding this anonymity of the donor. As we know that usually we don't show the photograph of the donor to the commissioning couple, but these days I am getting some patients who are saying, "Ma'am, आप ही नहीं दिखाते हैं, बाकी लोग तो हमको दिखाने के लिए ready होते हैं." So please enlighten us कि what the rules and regulations about this.
In 2005 also, 2010 also, 2015 also, 2017 also. There was section 3.5.13 and 14, which clearly mentioned in 2005 that the donor, oocyte donor and sperm donor should be anonymous. So anonymous means what? That the details of identity should not be revealed. Now, a few people are interpreting that showing photograph from distance does not mean the revealing the identity. Now that is their own interpretation. But we always recommend that showing photograph means you are revealing the identity, and that should never be done. In 2010, there was section 26, subsection 12. In 2015, it is mentioned in section 46, subsection 3. And in 2017, it is mentioned in 43, subsection 6. It is clearly mentioned that donor, whenever word donor comes, donor means always anonymous. You cannot reveal identity of donor to anybody. And it amounts to a criminal offense. If you reveal the identity of donor, then it amounts to criminal offense, or there is provision of punishment in recent ART bill.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Sharma. In this, I want to add, because some of the NRI patients, when they request us that they wanted this typical of this eye color or this kind of hair texture, so means what in my practice, I usually tell them ki only you send the picture of your eyes by clipping or by the texture of hair, because some of the NRI want ki unke hair texture jaisa bacha hona chahiye. So usually we are following some this modifications. Yeah. So now coming to this oocyte donor, Dr. Sharma, please enlighten us that what are the criteria for this oocyte donor, that how many oocytes can be retrieved from the donor?
I mentioned that in 2005 and 2010 guideline, 21 to 35 was the age. And in 2015, the age became 23 to 35. And just now also for oocyte donor, the age is 23 to 35 for oocyte donor. Now, how many oocytes? So in 2005 and 10 guideline, there was no such provision, no such restriction. And it was said that you can divide it into two. You can share the oocyte donor oocytes into maximum 2 couple, and one should get 7 good oocytes. So that was the provision. But in 2015, to our great surprise, there was section added, and in that section it was told that you cannot retrieve more than 7 eggs from a patient, from the donor. But immediately next section, it was said that you can distribute in not more than 2 people. Now, if you are getting 7, then how can you distribute 7 each? So that is contradictory. So objections were raised, and in 2007 guideline, the second part was removed. But the first part remains that you cannot retrieve for more than 7 eggs in oocyte donor. But this seems illogical. Suppose you have given the stimulation and patient has developed 20-25 eggs. So you retrieve 7, you cannot leave behind all other eggs. Otherwise, it will lead to OHSS. So this seems illogical.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, thank you so much. Now, is the guideline suggest that what are the minimum investigations are required for oocyte donor?
See, directly there is no mention, but if you go through ICMR guideline, there are different forms for keeping record of donor. So regarding oocyte donor, there is one form that is known as form M1. So when you go through form M1, there are columns 16 to 26 regarding investigations. So what are the mandatory investigation for oocyte donor? Those are mentioned there. So the investigation which are mentioned in column 16 to 26, they are mandatory as per law. Other than that, everything is obligatory, not mandatory.
Okay, thank you so much. Dr. Sharma, there is one question by a live viewer. Dr. Hema Jaju has joined. Madam is asking, if an infertile couple bring a relative for oocyte donor, can this be accepted?
Never. I said whenever word donor comes, donor must always be anonymous.
Yes.
Known donor is never acceptable. And all 4 guidelines till date, everybody says that anonymous donor, it is a criminal offense. If you take known donor, relative and friends who are known cannot be taken as a donor.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Sharma. Now, as you know, told, but how can we come to know that the woman has not donated ova in last 3 months? And this is a very tricky. Yeah.
So there is provision that a woman should not have donated for more than 6 times in lifetime. Their interval between 2 donations should not be less than 3 months, and she must not have received blood or blood products in last 6 months. Now these are 3-4 issues which we cannot assure ourselves. So that can only be assured by the patient. So by the history of patient. Okay. So it is always advisable to take in writing as an affidavit from the patient that these are the information given by me, that I have not donated for more than 6 times. In last 3 months, I have not donated and I have not received blood product. And that kind of affidavit should be taken from the patient. So if patient gives wrong information on affidavit, that means patient will be punishable and you will definitely be saved.
Okay, thank you so much. As we have discussed this oocyte donor, now I'm coming to this sperm donor. So please enlighten us the criteria about the sperm donor also.
Sperm donor again, regarding age, we all know 21 to 45 the age, previously in 2005 and 10 guideline. It was made in all the guidelines, it is 21 to 45. Okay, so there is no change for that age. Previously, it was said that one person can donate in one ART bank or sperm bank not more than 75 times or not more than 10 pregnancies. So the thing is that suppose some sperms are used asking from some sperm bank. So they will always give one paper to you that whenever this sperm results into pregnancy, then you are supposed to acknowledge that ART bank. So suppose there is 10 positive results with one semen, then that donor cannot be taken by that sperm bank. Now previously it was said that 75 times one sperm bank can collect, so donor semen. But now that is provision is now reduced to 25.
Okay.
2015 and 17 guidelines, that is reduced to 25 times one person can donate in one ART bank.
Okay. But in different ART banks,
that is not clarified. So definitely
Okay.
different sperm banks he can definitely donate.
Okay. Thank you so much. Now, a very practical query. The patients of azoospermia sometimes approaches us. Ki, ma'am, you take our semen also, and that you mix with them some donor semen also for his mental satisfaction. So, how we can justify this?
So we should not entertain such demand.
True.
And there is clear-cut provision that you cannot mix two semen sample. Okay. So, and one semen sample should be used in one couple at one time only. You cannot split also one semen sample in two patients. So that is clear in Act.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Now I'm coming to, because our show time is less, so I'm trying to cover each and everything. So now coming to this embryo donor. So first of all, there is one question by Dr. Vanita Nayak madam from the Facebook, Dr. Sharma.
Yes,
She is
ma'am.
asking how long the blastocyst can be preserved.
There is clear-cut rule that maximum embryo can be preserved for 5 years.
Yeah.
So donor gametes and embryos can be preserved for 5 years. But self gametes, if you preserve, self gametes means self ova for fertility preservation or self sperm, that can be preserved even more than 5 years.
True. Yeah. So I'm coming to this, the other very common query. Can frozen embryo of somebody donated to third party, is it legally allowed?
Madam, to specify the section, you can that in section 27, subsection 2 and 3, it is clearly mentioned that you cannot store donor gametes and embryo for more than 5 years in 2010 guideline.
Okay.
And in
Thank you.
2005 guideline, there is section 3.11.2, which has specified that you cannot store for more than 5 years.
Thank you so much. Now I am coming this regarding the very common query again. The commissioning couple who are opting for the embryo donation, is Act offered some cheaper alternatives also? Is it also legally allowed? These are some common practical things we are getting data, right?
Whenever you do embryo donation on cheaper rate, that is you yourself are proving that you are creating embryo bank, or you are putting embryos which you have in your possession who is left out of somebody's embryo. Okay, so that is the proof. So basically, whenever you do embryo donation, that is a costly affair because you have to select anonymous donor sperm, anonymous oocyte donor, and then you have to make embryo for that particular couple, commissioning couple. So that is the costly affair. But if you offer at cheap rate, that means you are proving that you are doing the wrong thing and you are making embryo bank. So that is the issue. So you cannot do that. Embryo bank without owner or without commissioning couple, you cannot make embryo. So before making embryo, you must have signature of commissioning couple in the relevant forms. Otherwise, you cannot form embryos.
Yeah, thank you so much. Dr. Gitin, some of our viewers have joined from Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, so many African cities, some doctors have joined. So now, welcome to all of you in our show. So now I'm coming to, as storage, you have already mentioned as the criteria. So any precautions are recommended in the guidelines for this genetic material storing?
For genetic material?
Storage.
Storage, I have mentioned that for your gametes, suppose you are preserving for fertility preservation your ova or your sperm, you can store it whatever amount of years you want to store. But for donor gamete and your embryos, any embryo, your embryo, donor embryo, you cannot store it for more than 5 years.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Now, Adem, my question regarding this record keeping, which is a very big headache for all of us. So now, what to keep and how to keep and how long to keep?
Total record.
Yeah.
starting the treatment to the end of treatment, whatever you are doing, every record is to be maintained, and you have to maintain for 10 years at your center, and after completion of 10 years you are supposed to deposit it in the national registry. You cannot destroy it. But as far as I know, till date there is no national registry framed. So in absence of national registry, it is your duty to maintain all the records with you. So you cannot destroy any document.
Thank you so much. Now my very next query is very important. बहुत सारे हम young gynaes के दिमाग में ऐसा query होता है. So now this is a golden opportunity that Dr. Sharma is with us. Dr. Sharma, when we have seen some patient, this query is related to this posthumous collection of gametes. So what are the guidelines suggest for regarding this unconscious patient? Unconscious patient is the can the wife claim and collect the gametes of this husband if the husband is unconscious?
Yes. So basically in 2005 and 2010 and even in 2015, in all three guidelines, it was said that with the consent of woman, you can collect sperm from the dead husband or dying husband who has not been able to give consent. Okay. In 2005, there was section 3.5.11. In 2010, there was section 23, subsection 6. And in 2015, there was section 49, subsection 6, which mentioned that with the consent of mother, this wife, widow, you can collect the sperm from the posthumous. Now, in 2017 bill, first time it was mentioned, although it is logical too, because with the consent of woman only you cannot collect, because sometimes if there is dispute in between husband and wife, you may not know. So that kind of things were coming into picture, and that's why in 2017, first time in section 40 subsection 6, they mentioned that if consent is previously obtained by the husband, then only you can collect. So if you have consent of husband and wife both, only then you can collect. Otherwise, you cannot collect from posthumous. That is 2017 bill.
Okay. Thank you so much. Means, and the same guidelines for the bedridden patients whose death is imminent?
But if he is able to give consent, suppose somebody is conscious and able to give consent, and suppose he gives consent, then you can definitely take, no problem. But suppose he is not in position to give consent, so in absence of his consent, you cannot.
Thank you so much. Now I am coming to my next question regarding this PCPNDT. In between, Dr. Ajay Jha has joined from Delhi. He is asking regarding the maximum age limit for the female oocyte donor. I think just now we have discussed. Sorry, your voice is breaking.
35.
Yeah. He's writing something more. Let him write. I will take my. So regarding this ART and PCPNDT invasive procedures, so please enlighten us that which forms are recommended for which procedures. There are so many controversies.
Yeah, every time this question, whenever asked, and I explain in detail. There is need to, I can say, teach all appropriate authorities of India, and there is need for uniform implementation of PCPNDT Act all over India. See, I am going to 80 corporate hospitals all over India for medical legal audit, and I have seen that in Delhi there are 5 zones: North Zone, South Zone, East Zone, West Zone, and Central Zone. And in all 5 zones, they are filling different kinds of forms. So there is no unanimity even in Delhi. And what I can say about Bombay and Pune and Ahmedabad, see, we are not filling any form for any procedure. OM pickup, follicular study, OM pickup, follicular study, embryo transfer, IUI, we are not filling any form in Gujarat. But whenever we go to Pune or Mumbai, they ask to fill form for follicular study also, for OM pickup also, for embryo transfer also, for IUI also. Now somebody is asking form D, somebody is asking form E, somebody is asking form F. Now, the tragedy is the Form E is for the laboratory, although some are not registered as laboratory, even then they are filling that kind of forms. So these are all the problems. So to understand that, I always want to clarify one thing, that in follicular study, patient is not pregnant. You are not doing removing anything from the body. You are not sending it to genetic lab for any analysis. So that is not PCPNDT procedure. So according to PCPNDT Act, if you read section 2 subsection I, it explains what is PCPNDT procedure. It says that PCPNDT procedure means if you remove something from the body, either it is fluid, either it is blood or amniotic fluid or tissue or body part, and send it for analysis, molecular analysis, biochemical analysis or chromosomal analysis to genetic laboratory. And if that test is such that through which you can know sex, either select the sex or detect the sex. Now, if you do ova pickup, you are removing ova only. You are not sending anything to genetic laboratory. You are not doing any analysis. Patient is not pregnant. So how can it be PCPNDT procedure? The same thing is embryo transfer. Here you are not sending anything to genetic laboratory for any analysis through which you can detect or select the sex. So it is not PCPNDT procedure. So I always say that the ovum pickup, embryo transfer, IUI, then follicular study, these are not PCPNDT procedure, and you are not supposed to fill any forms of PCPNDT for this procedure. Now, if you are doing PGD, PGS or NIPT or semen wash, then they may demand that you should fill. That is because these are invasive procedure done without sonography guidance. So in this case, you are supposed to fill Form F, section A, C and D, and you are supposed to take consent in Form G. And whenever you are doing any invasive procedure with sonography guidance, that is amniocentesis or chorionic villus biopsy or cordocentesis or fetal biopsy, then you are supposed to fill Form F, section 1, A, B, C, D, all 4 sections, and simultaneously you have to take consent in Form G for invasive procedure.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Now, also a very important question. Dr. Sharma, these days we are seeing so many IVF centers are doing the publicity regarding the guarantee. So, कि कुछ में तो ऐसा लिखा होता है कि 3 cycles नहीं guaranteed, नहीं तो पैसा वापस.
Yes,
Some are saying this much of money, otherwise पैसा वापस. So, what are the legal implications of this guarantee in ART treatment?
Basically, people are taking advantage because the laws are not, implementation of law is very poor. See, if you go through Medical Council of India, that is Indian Medical Council, Code of Conduct Etiquette Ethics, Regulation 2002, in section 1.8, it is clearly mentioned. And what they have mentioned, that it is unethical to do any contract of no cure for no payment. So no cure, no payment is an unethical contract. So suppose you give money back for not getting the result, that means it is the contract for no cure, no payment, and that is unethical as per Code of Conduct Etiquette and Ethics, Regulation 2002. And for that, action can be taken by a State Medical Council or Medical Council of India against you.
Thank you so much. Yeah. My other very common query, this is on the WhatsApp by one doctor writing, what's the criteria for regarding of mixing the gametes from 2 donors in 1 cycle?
That is not allowed. Mixing is not allowed at all. It is illegal.
Yeah. Other thing, that what's the criteria regarding this, the import and export of gametes?
Yes, previously with the ICMR permission, it was allowed for the patient himself or herself. Suppose somebody's embryos are lying outside. Now, in between, the custom and excise kept this product, that is any gamete or embryo, in prohibited product. So they were not allowing. But recently, again, there is a gazette, and in that gazette, it is clarified that now that they have removed it from the prohibited product. So with the permission of ICMR, you can definitely import your own gametes for your own treatment.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Now again a very common query. If there is some mismatches happened in a very busy IVF center, so who is responsible and how to tackle this?
Which movie it was?
Sorry.
So one movie was there for
Yes.
mismatch, no?
Yeah.
So
I'm not
basically,
recollecting. Akshay Kumar's movie. I'm not recollecting the name. Yes. Yeah.
so basically, whenever there is mismatch, it amounts to res ipsa loquitur. Res ipsa loquitur means there is no need to prove that you are negligent. So you have to maintain proper record. You have to properly label all the gametes and embryos which are in your possession. And if there is any mixing, then you have to explain in the court of law. And court may take decision that even they may not ask for the explanation and decide case against you, because it is not allowed. Mismatching is not allowed.
Thank you so much. Now,
Of your service.
Yeah. Now, very another query is regarding if the married man is on chemotherapy and he has stored sperms in the bank, and there is no consent was taken, and suppose if the married man, the death occurs in the treatment, and wife is gone for the second marriage, and the parents want to claim for this sperms and use in the surrogate. So what are the legal guidelines for this?
So basically, although we don't recommend 2005 guideline, because we sometimes think that they are not more logical, and 2010 are more logical. But surprisingly, there is one section in 2005 guideline, that is the section 3.9.1.8. And in that particular section, it is clearly mentioned that suppose somebody dies intestate, means without doing will, that to whom to hand over my gametes or my sperm. Okay, so in that case, legal hair become the owner of that sperms. Okay, now here the situation what you have put, that wife is not claiming. So in absence of husband, now he has dead. Now wife becomes the legal heir, but here wife is already married and procreated. So the question here is that whether father and mother can claim. So in absence of wife, the court will decide that who is the legal heir. And suppose court gives the certificate that father is a legal heir, and you can hand over the sperm to the father. But again, in that section, it is clearly mentioned that although father and mother can become legal heir, but they cannot use it in surrogate.
Okay.
They can use it only in the wife of that child.
Okay.
They cannot use it in surrogate. That is not it.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Sharma. Despite of having your very, very busy schedule, you have taken now time for this webinar. So I think already I exceeded around 1 hour. My show timing is only 30 minutes now. We exceeded up to the 1 hour. So thank you once again, Dr. Sharma, for giving your precious time and sharing such a good information with us. So this session is
many messages. I am looking into the chat box. Everybody is saying, "Yes, sir, आपको picture का नाम नहीं मालूम." It was good news.
Yes. Dr. Mujawar has also written. Yes. So thank you very much, Dr. Sharma. You have answered very, very nicely. This Cadbury celebrations for you from my side. So with this, we will wind up our session for today. Over to you, Sankalp. Before I wind up, so friends, tomorrow again we are having a very interesting discussion with Dr. Padmani Prasad Madam on the female sexual dysfunction and female sexual response. And before that one, also more important information, the September month we are going to dedicate our teachers and gurus. So with this, on the 5th September, we are bringing Dr. Rishikesh Pai with us on this show with a very important topic. What's the progress of the IVF in the past 3 decades? Rest details Sankalp will share soon. So thank you, Sankalp, and thank you, enough all.
Madam, September month is also crucial for me because 1st to 10th September is the voting for Foxy, and I am going to contest for Vice President as June. So there's a humble request to support me and vote for me.
Sure. I was going to say that you have spoken, but yes, over to you, Sankalp.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Sharma, and giving you valuable time. Thank you, Dr. Ritu. Very important and interesting topic in today's scenario, the medical legal aspect, and nicely explained and nicely discussed with us. Thank you so much from the makers of Vinofol HB and Proinofol. Thank you so much. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Yeah, good night. Yeah. Bye-bye. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thanks to all of you who have joined with us. Yeah. Bye-bye.